honor you who have served us so well. Portsmouth is also unique in Hampton Roads in that we have joined with many other cities across the country in celebrating the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War. And so today, our guest speaker is not only a good friend to many of us, but a Vietnam veteran. Today we're going to hear some inspiring remarks, I'm sure, from a member of our Military Affairs Committee, a member of the Portsmouth family, Peter Youngblood, U.S. Army Colonel, retired. Peter has been in Portsmouth since about 2003 when he retired. He's gotten very active in the community. He serves on the Planning Commission. He serves on all of these military affair activities. And he also runs a summer camp that he affectionately calls Camp Peter for his grandchildren every summer when they come to visit for a few weeks. He's definitely a Renaissance man. He's a great cook. He makes great pickles. He welds. He does all sorts of volunteer work in the Old Town community. But today we want to talk about his service to the country. He served more than 37 years in the Army and Army Reserves. He was drafted in 1966 after his first year at Hampton-Sydney College and went to serve in the 1st Cavalry Division as a combat medic. After 37 years, he came back here, and during that time, he was awarded many service medals. Meritorious Service with the 3 Oak Leaf Cluster, Good Conduct Medals, National Defense Service Medals, Joint Meritorious Unit Awards, a Legion of Merit, a Combat Medic Badge, Aircraft Crewman Badge. He worked in personnel and training and operations and logistics. He spent 3 years in Italy and in Germany. And we're so glad he decided to retire with his Army wife, Sarah, here in Portsmouth. He's now part of our family. I'm very pleased to introduce my friend to you, Peter Youngblood.
Golly, I find it hard to live up to such high praise here. I'm going to try and keep in mind the guidance I got from an Army chaplain one time. The key to good public speaking is the 5 B's. Be brief, brother, be brief. Since we're celebrating the 50th, or commemorating the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War, I'm going to talk about the Vietnam veterans. Not to denigrate veterans from other conflicts, but I know more about the Vietnam stuff, and I find that anybody under the age of about 60 really doesn't know much about it all. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an education here. There's no test, so don't take notes. Who are the Vietnam veterans? Well, first of all, there were about 9 million veterans, or 9 million service members who served during the Vietnam era. That was from August 64 to May 75. We'll call them Vietnam era veterans because only 2.7 million served in Vietnam. Of that, 2/3 of those are dead, and that's just because of old age. The youngest Vietnam veteran would be about 60 years old now. Kind of startling because I still think of myself as that 19-year-old kid who wore younger man's clothes. So, who are these guys? Who are these Vietnam veterans? Well, the common perception, which we get from TV and news media and movies, is that the Vietnam veteran is a drug-addicted, homeless, psychotic loser. I hate to say it that way, but that's what's painted. I'd like to present some facts and let you form your own opinions, and hopefully it'll mirror mine. Veterans as a whole have a lower unemployment rate than their peers who are non-veterans. Compared to non-veterans, veterans are more likely to be married, to be employed in management or professional occupations, and have a 13% higher income per the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Now let's talk about the Vietnam veterans. Once again, I'm going to give you statistics, but there's no tests, so don't take notes. The Vietnam veterans were the most highly educated fighting force we have ever fielded. 79% had at least a high school education, compared to 63% in Korea and 45% in World War II. Think about that. In World War II, only half of the people even had a high school education. In Vietnam, 88% were Caucasian, 10.6% were African American. 10.6%. There were 303,000 wounded in Vietnam. About half of them required hospitalization, the other half did not. Of the wounded, 5,283 lost a limb. Some of them lost multiple limbs. And the multiple limb losses were at a rate that was 300% that of World War II. What happened is our medical evacuation and medical treatment was so much better than World War II that if you didn't die when you hit the ground, you were going to live. In World War II, they would have died. 25% were drafted for Vietnam versus 66% for World War II. Now that's a deceptive figure because a lot of the people who joined during the Vietnam era were only joining to avoid the draft. If you were drafted, you had a 2-year obligation, but you know where you're going. You get drafted, you're going to go in the infantry. If you joined the Army, you had a 3-year obligation. The Navy, you had a 4-year. Air Force, you had a 4-year obligation. But not too many Navy guys were running through the rice paddies, and the Air Force guys were in a different category too. If you volunteered for the Army, you got your choice of duty station or your occupational specialty, your job. So a lot of guys would join for 3 years and request an assignment to Germany or someplace else other than Vietnam. So there was a big incentive to join instead of getting drafted. Now the reality is that guy who went to Germany probably found out that 6 months later his unit got deployed to Vietnam, so there he was anyway.